And we are live. Welcome, everyone, to the Connected for Real podcast. I'm Rebbetzin Bat-Chen Grossman, and I'm a marriage coach for women in business. And I love that intersection where business and marriage collide or meet, and how we can make them work together and support each other so that you have a really good marriage that supports what you're doing and a business that supports your life and isn't taking you away from it. So today with me is Keren Eliezar, and we're talking about birth and you and how birthing, your children and growing yourself have so much to do with you as a whole. So Keren, first introduce yourself and then we'll get right into it.
Sure. My name is Keren Eliezar. I'm a licensed social worker. I've spent the last 4 years working in my local Department of Education, helping the English-speaking families here. In the last year and a half, I branched off from there and I created a private consultancy business where I help families across the country and families looking to make Aliyah come and find schools here in Israel. And in my private life, I'm a mom of four little rambunctious kids. And I found myself really, just like you said, looking to strike that perfect balance that we all strive for. And I came across this amazing strategy called the Nurtured Heart Approach. And I became trained in it. And so now, in addition to everything else, I've been offering courses in the Nurtured Heart Approach. And I'm really excited to offer that to everyone because it's made such an impact in my own household. And I hope to be able to share that with my clients and with everyone around me.
I love that. I love that. And we met in real life, by the way. So this is really
Yay.
fun. I can't say that about every single one of my guests, but some of them are just super special. So I wanted you guys to all know that.
Yeah.
Um, Keren, let's talk about the Nurtured Heart approach. What is it, and why is it going to help us with the transition between birth and, you know, going from just being ourselves to having a kid, or having 3 kids to suddenly having 4, or having 7 and suddenly having 8. You could say, I'm talking totally about
Right.
me now.
Right.
As you guys know, I am in that transition right now. And yeah, I think that every single time it's another birth and another experience and another transition. So let's talk about
Right.
what are the skills and the tools that you can give us for that.
Right. And resetting yourself. We spoke about this, how I've essentially doubled the family that I grew up with. I'm one of two. My husband's one of two. We don't know what the rule book looks like for a family of 4 kids. We have no clue what we're doing. So when I came across the Nurture Heart approach, I was like, yes, finally a playbook with plays, with strategies. Like I felt like suddenly the control was being returned to the rightful owner and that my kids weren't calling the shots, which was so amazing about it. So it was developed. It's a strategy that was developed in the States in the 90s. And it was originally developed to deal with really intense kids, like kids who were just off the walls. The system didn't know what to do with them. No one could handle them. They were throwing drugs at them left and right. And this was considered a strategy, a holistic strategy to try to incorporate the kid and build the kid up. For me, I see it as very much dual sided, that it's building the child up at the same time that it's building you up and building a space for the parent to be in the relationship so that the relationship isn't only child centered, child focused. It's more about the give and take between the two of you instead of it constantly being a relationship about giving and not taking. And that's the beauty in it. And that's what's amazing. And like you said, every time we add a new tiny little soul into this world, we need to rethink our strategy, rethink our lives. Everything gets shuffled. And like it's very akin to like to dance. Like how do we get out of line, we get out of step for a little bit, and then we have to do that dance all over again. And when everyone's doing the moves and we're all working, it's beautiful and it works together. And then sometimes, everyone trips up a little bit and then we have to find our place again. So that's really what it's all about.
Oh my gosh. So you say you guys were 2 and 2 and then you suddenly had 4.
Yeah.
My husband and
Yeah.
I are both from families of 4 kids. So when when I imagined it, I was like, "Oh, 4 kids is the perfect number." And he was like, "Yeah, I grew up with 4 kids." And now we're going on to 8. It's like, how did this happen?
Amazing. Amazing. Thank God. And you know what? You're making it up as you go. And that's the thing. I'm a very structured individual. We just spoke about this. I'm very structured. I need rules. I need a framework. And when my kid starts throwing a tantrum, and there were times in my house, really, I think after child number three, I felt like I was walking on eggshells. I had one particularly intense child. I didn't know what was going to set that child off. I could be, I don't know, chopping vegetables in the kitchen and then hear a complete meltdown in a corner and be like, what just happened? Like, I had no clue what just happened. And I didn't have a toolbox. I did not know how to handle it. And now, with four, I feel like I have this amazing toolbox. And not only do I have the tools, I have a village. I have my village. I have my people to turn to who get me, who know what it's about and know how I want to build up my child. And of course, that intense child changes, right? It's not always the same intense child in the house. Like it flows, like just like you're doing the dance with one child, you're doing the dance with the other kids, and the one who's pushing your buttons today might not be the one who's pushing your buttons tomorrow. But there's always going to be one child that knows just how to push your buttons. And it's amazing to have this toolbox to be like, oh, she's doing that. Okay, now I'm going to do that. He's doing that. Now I'm going to do that. And just to do this dance with them. And at the same time that you're working on the relationship, you're building yourself. You're making space for yourself within the relationship and you're building them up, which is so great. You're giving them the same tools that you're building yourself. You're setting those tools into your children. And then they go out into the world and they have this resiliency because they develop this inner wealth. The literature talks a lot about building inner wealth, which to me I think about as positive midot. Like we're always trying to build those positive traits in our children. So it's very congruent. The whole strategy is also very congruent with chinuch and with the Torah observant lifestyle, in that we're building the child up from the inside out. We want them to see what's beautiful, what they're great in, and by continually focusing on the positive and making sure that they know what's so amazing about themselves and reminding us, because sometimes we get so bogged down in what's going wrong, we don't always remember what's going right. So having it always focused on what's going right, how things are going well, how things have improved, it changes the whole atmosphere in the house and it sets the child up for success, which is just so amazing.
I love it. And you know what? I also, you said it started with the explosive children, the ones that were super intense. But at the end of the
Right.
day, they're the ones that push you to come up with the best
Yep.
skills that are going to help everyone else, right? So you can use the
Right.
same
Right.
skills on every kid, no matter
Right.
what intensity level they have. And by the way, just because a kid isn't intense on the outside doesn't mean that they don't have intense emotions and an intense experience on the inside. So it's really important from my experience. What I've been seeing is that each one of my kids has an inner world that's so different. And I am taking the time consciously and intentionally to tap into each one of their styles, no matter how intense or, almost like there's some kids who just know how to get your attention and some kids that could just sort of slip through if you don't pay
Right.
attention. So I
Right.
find that it's really important to notice every single one. And when you talk about, not only growing the child, but also growing the parent, here's where we really get good because that's where the money's at, right? That's where the power lies.
Right. Right. So you don't, I found when after my third child, I found that I was having a lot of feelings of being resentful, being angry. I wasn't happy with the situation. I wasn't happy with the way I was parenting, but I also wasn't happy with the way I felt at the end of the day after parenting. And having this strategy makes me confident that I'm making the right choices as a parent, makes me confident that I'm building up my children, but also makes me confident that I'm creating space in that relationship where I feel good about myself. And I'm not finishing the day angry that I didn't get to do XYZ, or that it was all about them and it wasn't about me. And you spoke about the time that it takes. We always have to be there for our kids. It requires being so vigilant. But when things are going well, when things are going smooth, you put in the time, and it's worth $1,000,000 compared to a shouting match, screaming, lecturing, wagging your finger in the face. Think about how much time you've invested in lecturing your children. Okay, now take that same amount of time and think about saying what's going right. What did they do today? Oh, you came upstairs and you ate breakfast. Wow. I didn't have to remind you. You took it out yourself and you sat and you ate. That shows maturity. That shows responsibility. That shows that you care about my time, that you're respectful. And it's not that they're building up. They're not wondering does it mean to be respectful? How do I become respectful? It's, oh, I already have that within myself. All I did was come downstairs and eat breakfast. But you're telling me that I'm respectful, and that character trait, that positive midot, already exists within me, within my character. It's not something that I have to go and find and wonder, how do I achieve? It's there, and I just need to bring it out. It just needs to be groomed out of me. And that's really what it's about showing every child their greatness from the inside out. And with that, I feel like the parent also grows. Like, I'm also discovering new things about myself. Like I said, I felt like, after 3, 4 kids, my life was getting messy. Things were getting messy, and I need structure. And how do I thrive? And suddenly I'm exploring and discovering, like, oh, hey, I have patience. Like, that exists within inside of me. I can be patient with the mess and figure it out. The same way. And the other thing, it grows their vocabulary. The unintended benefit. I've told my kids, "Wow, you're so diligent," and they look at me. They're like, "Diligent mean? What do you mean by diligent?" Which goes off into a whole another side conversation. But it's really about showing up, just showing up. And not just with a good job or a way to go, showing up with very, very specific criteria that shows the child that you mean business, that you're there, that you see them doing whatever it is that they're doing, and that's already amazing. That they just need to be them, that they just need to be there. And that is greatness in and of itself, that they're there.
Right. I love that. I love that you say be specific because, one time I was in a parenting class and they said, imagine giving your kids like $100 bill. Like to them, that means nothing. But if you give them a
Right.
bunch of coins and you tell them, oh, this is great. Oh my gosh, I have so much money. Right. So a kid that age, they really, really need you to really get the details out and put
Right.
it out in
Right.
their face for
Right.
them to
Lay it out for
understand
them.
and appreciate.
Yeah. And they want to know, because it's all about the relationship. What do children crave the most? They crave a connection with their mom and with their dad and with all the important people in their lives. They just want that connection. So they want to know that you're the one presenting that information, that you're laying it out for them, and that you're genuine about it. It needs to come from a place of authenticity and being genuine. If you just say, with your back turned to them while you're busy getting dinner together, honey, I'll leave you for a second. You really need to tune in and to slow down. Again, it's about being hyper vigilant. But if you take the 5, 10 minutes out of your day to be super inquisitive and super vigilant, the rest of the day will go so smoothly. And you will be questioning, what were you doing lecturing your child for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, every time they did something wrong? When you can take the same energy, take that $100 bill and hand it out for something good instead of something bad, and just change the whole flow of energy in your household, and it makes the world of difference.
I love it. I love it.
So
Yes.
the approach has 3 stands, and the term stand is used intentionally. There's no wishy-washy to it. It's a stand. You can't. There's not a gray line. It's not gray. There's nothing gray about it. It's very black and white. And the
Mhm.
first stand is absolutely no. So the idea is to take out all the negativity. take out everything negative about the day. And it's very different than ignoring. If a child is behaving in a way that you don't appreciate, you don't ignore them. You still need to show up. You still need to be there, but you need to take every opportunity of them doing something right to point it out to them, to say, wow, I see you're calming yourself down. Wow, I see you put your plate away even though you're angry at me. It shows me that you can still be you can still be respectful despite being upset. You can prioritize, you can structure your feelings in such a way that I know you're upset at me and I can recognize that, but you still have the maturity to respect the household. Learning to show up even if they're doing something that you don't approve of in a way that doesn't highlight the negativity. Just taking the no out completely. And it's like a deck of cards. Once you're able to like think about building, a house out of a deck of cards, the whole thing will collapse if it doesn't have the base. So you need to start by taking out the negativity. Once you've successfully achieved that, then you go into bringing in the positive, to bringing in a positive in a way that is uncomfortable for you. I know for me, it's so uncomfortable. I was never a cheerleader growing up. I was never like, I didn't work as a teacher. I didn't work as a babysitter. Like, I was never in the field where I had to be like, wow, you're amazing. When you drop your kid off at preschool and the preschool teacher's like, you have such an amazing child. They're a genius. They're beautiful and they're amazing. And you're like, really? The kid who spilled his milk this morning and pinched his little sister and was picking his nose in the car on the way here. Like, that's who you're telling me is this like amazing, like that was just not me. That's not my style. This pushes you outside your comfort zone to use a vocabulary that maybe is new for you, that maybe is uncomfortable for you, but you see that it opens doors that maybe we're not even, I know for me, a few years ago, I didn't even know that that door existed. I did not know that we could function in this way. But in order for that to happen, you have to take out the negativity. You have to take out any ounce of doubt. And that in and of itself is a huge, massive step. And so once you have no negativity, once you're constantly building up the positive, then the third step is to be absolutely clear. Absolutely clear. What does that mean? There are boundaries, there are rules, and it looks different for every family. And this is where you come in. This is where you want to be, and the relationship comes in. I know that in my house, I don't want to see a TV, a device, a phone on after a certain hour. I need peace and quiet. I don't need music in the background. I don't need shows in the background. So we have a certain hour where all the devices shut down. That is a clear rule. And that is a rule that respects me, that respects who I am, that respects what I need as a person in the relationship. And so my children know that after an hour, after a certain hour, those devices need to go off. That is clear to them. And when I come to them at that hour and say, okay, it's done, there's no negotiating. There's no, but 5 more minutes, mom, or I want to finish my episode, or, but I didn't get to do this, this, and that. It's like, no, this is the hour. This is what's happening. Boom, done. And there's no energy towards that. I'm not getting excited. I'm not in a way that is building up the positive. I'm not yelling at them saying, no, it's this hour. You said you were supposed to get off of it. You're getting off it now. It's just constantly reinforcing without any negative energy. This is happening. This is what's going on. And the rule has been clarified ahead of time. They know that that is the rule. So absolute clarity. And a lot of anecdotes are given throughout the literature. And one of them that I really, really like is a video game analogy. So think about your life as a video game. If the kid loses the round, they're so excited. They're so excited about the video game that they want to get back in. And so the video game is constantly building them up. It's constantly giving them bells and whistles and points and all kinds of things when they're doing something right. When they do something wrong, it's not saying, oh, we'll take another 5 minutes or lecturing them for another 5 minutes or pointing out all their faults. It's just like a wah, 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 wah. And then they can start over again. Then they want to hop right back into the game. And it's the same idea here that if you have absolutely clear boundaries that you are reinforcing without any negativity, and instead you're making the time in the time that they're with you, so rich and so exciting with all those bells and whistles. The second that you tell them, the round's up, you're done, turn off the device, they want to get back in the game because they know that the energy comes from interacting with you in a positive way. They know that they're going to be getting positive feedback from every time they engage with you. And again, what does a child want more than anything else in this world? To have that relationship. They crave that relationship with their parents. And so if you make that relationship based on building up their character, building up their self-worth, they're going to keep coming back for more and more and more in ways that you're going to love, instead of them pushing your buttons all the time, which is exactly what was happening to me.
Oh, I love it. I love that you're saying there's this, three stands, like the things that really are non-negotiable. But, and I'm saying this, for the sake of all of us listeners and me, there's a certain addiction to the negativity. We're so
Yeah.
used to it.
Yeah.
We like, it's almost like this drama thing, and it's a loop, and it's a thing that we get into, and it's really hard to stop yourself, and all these thoughts and and beliefs that we have behind the scenes. It is so much more, it's the easy way out, right? Like, you think, okay, I'll just say no and I'll get them, and they need to understand, blah blah blah, right? All the lecturing.
Yeah.
um and we do it because we're lazy, because taking the time to be positive, like you said, I don't know if I have the vocabulary and the ability
Right.
to speak to a child the way that you modeled, right? And that's not true, because here I am on a podcast. I didn't think I had the vocabulary and the ability to speak for so long, and we're already in like episode 100 and I don't know what. So,
Yeah.
it's a belief that's totally false, and I totally understand that in my head. But when it comes to the, moment of truth, it is so hard to disconnect from the negativity and to push yourself past to have a meaningful conversation.
Right. So parenting is a skill, just like anything else. And think about how much time we invest in all these other wonderful skills that we have. How much, I don't know, I like to cook, I like to do yoga. Like I've gone out and I've done trainings and courses and all of this. I have multiple degrees. I've invested so much in my education and in my hobbies. Why don't I invest the same amount of time into my parenting? It's literally a course with material, with information that you can say, okay, this is the recipe. This is what needs to happen. My kid throws this at me, I do that. My kid throws this at me, I do that. And the more we practice it, the more we hone the skill, the more it just flows. The more it comes naturally. So within the course, we talk about what kind of language we should be using, what kind of recognitions we should be using, how do we recognize a child. It's very important not to use sarcasm, because sarcasm goes way, especially younger kids, goes way over their head. They have no clue what you're talking about. And it might feel like a compliment in the moment, but at the end, it's not a compliment. So we talk about what's the terminology, what are the spaces that we function in, and what happens when it's not going right. What happens if what we say has the opposite effect, or it has a different, completely different effect of what we expected. I know when I started using this strategy, and I would come and tell my child, wow, like you cleaned up and I didn't even have to tell you anything, and you just did it. I would hear from another little child on the corner of the room, I did it too, mom. Like I also did it. Why aren't you recognizing me? Why aren't you recognizing my greatness? And then I became a little overwhelmed. It's like, well, what do I do? Like I was handing this compliment out to this kid, and I'm just going to hand another compliment out to that kid too, without recognizing it, without seeing it. So all the situations arise. There are situations also with older children. Maybe they told you something, that they went to go do something and something else actually happened. How do you deal with lying? How do you deal when the child isn't honest with you? You want to build that trust. You want to build that relationship. But it's so easy to fall back into our old habits, which is why we need to take the time to invest in the skill set. So it's always fresh. And that's really why I'm doing it. I'm so excited to share it with everyone around me. But for me, We talked about creating that balance, right, between professional life and home life. This is my professional life merging with my home life. I want to teach it to everyone else so that I can have it fresh in my mind constantly with my children, that it's always there. And I always know how to function in a way that I'm proud of, that I'm proud of my children and I'm proud of myself in building them up. So, and we talk about in the course, we talk about the reset. What happens when things aren't going right? How do we reset ourselves? And the beauty of the reset is that we're all human. We all make mistakes. We're not all going to function, perfectly according to the rule book 100% of the time. So when things go wrong, when, the child isn't reacting the way I need them to react, when I'm not reacting the way I would like to react, how do we reset ourselves and come to a neutral place where we can start over, start from the beginning so the child knows and is confident in the fact that I'm always going to be there for them. I'm always going to be showing up for them in the positive, making sure that they know that they're amazing, that they're great as is. They want to feel supported. And if I learn to reset myself, even if I screw up, I know that I can start fresh. And that's a beautiful tool to give anyone. Think about not just yourself, but modeling that for your child. If you can teach your child that mistakes are okay, but we can start over again and we can refresh ourselves and work towards transformation in a way that is productive and conducive and inclusive of everyone in the relationship, it's a gift that keeps on giving.
I love that you say you invested so much in your professional career and you invested so much in your hobbies. And, you know, a lot of people think, yeah, but, that stuff has ROI, like there's a return on investment. When I invest in my
Yeah.
business, I know I'm going to make more money. Or when I
Mm,
invest, whatever. And it's like, you guys, this is the biggest ROI ever
right,
because you're buying peace of mind, you're buying confidence, you're buying being enough, just
right,
all the things. It's
right,
so powerful. And I think that a lot of us I know about myself, I had a very hard time investing in things that weren't tangible. But eventually I realized early on in my process that like actually that doesn't make any sense. And that's part of the integration that I talk about, right? It's like, will you invest in the business stuff to make it simpler and easier so that you can be more at home with your kids and, make the same amount of money without working as hard, things like that? Yeah, well, then you should also invest in your marriage and making sure that your marriage is supporting you and the way that you shine and the way that you want to
right,
live. And the same thing with parenting, right? You have
right,
kids, they came down without any paperwork, like there
right.
was no sticker.
There's no manual involved.
No manual.
Yeah.
I was just listening to a midwife and she was speaking. They brought her in to speak about teenage girls and how to talk to your daughters and whatever. It was really great. It was wonderful. And she said that she thinks it's the funniest thing when the baby comes out and the father says, "How much does he weigh?" And she's like, "I don't know. He didn't come out with a sticker. I first have to weigh him, you know?" And the way she said that was so funny. She's like, "What do they think? It comes out with a sticker, like a little piece of meat in the store, it says exactly how much it weighs right off the bat."
Right,
Um, so it just, they didn't come with any manuals and paperwork and stickers and
right,
nothing. They just come out beautiful and
right,
delicious and baby. And
right,
slowly God gives us that ability to, catch
right,
up.
right.
And I think it's amazing. So let's talk about you as, us as the container for all these things. We're having babies, we're growing, we're learning, we're experiencing, and a lot of people get lost in the mix. They get
Right,
lost in
right,
in the shuffle and they lose themselves.
right. So one thing I think is very important to emphasize is that it's amazing to have a village to be supported. But you don't have to feel like, oh, I'm trying to get this done and my spouse is not on the same page as me. My spouse is not using the same vocabulary as me. My spouse doesn't think it's going to work this way. Or not even a spouse, a teacher, a grandparent, whoever, whatever other important adults is in the child's life. That's okay. That's okay, because the energy is so infectious that people pick up on what you're doing without necessarily having gone through the training themselves, or being expressing their outright eagerness to jump on board. When they see that, when my son was at the table doing his homework and I told him, wow, like, you took out your homework yourself. No one had to tell you to do it. Like, you're being very diligent in your work. This is when the term diligent came up. And my husband, who was next to me, jumped right on board. He was like, yeah, good job. Like, look at you doing it without anyone having to tell you what to do. It's not that my husband has invested the same amount of time into these courses as I have, but he sees the vocabulary that's going on, and just becomes the vocabulary of the house. It becomes the way we interact with each other. And when those interactions are pleasant and running smoothly, you have the space. You have the space to focus on you. You have the mind space. You're not constantly thinking, what went wrong, or you're not constantly in a state of anger. You can let go. And there's this sense of peace knowing, okay, this relationship is working for me. And I can invest in myself knowing that this relationship is strong and that I will be supported within the relationship. And that to me was so important because, like I said, when after my third child, I was struggling. I was really struggling to not feel resentful at the end of the day. I was wondering, what do I do for myself when I feel pulled in so many different directions? How can I find the space for me in this relationship? And it wasn't about doing anything specific. It was actually bringing it back to the relationship itself. And that's what's so amazing, is because as the children, they want the focus to be on the relationship. The child, like you said, the child couldn't care less if you're handing them $100 bill. The child doesn't care how many toys you're buying them, how many times you're taking them out to ice cream, how many restaurants they're going to go sit in. No, they want you. They want that relationship with you. And they don't care where that relationship happens as long as it's happening. And so once I put the focus back on the relationship, instead of feeling angry about the relationship, I put the focus back on the relationship, built each of us up in a way that made the relationship move smoothly. And then I felt, wow, like I have space for me all of a sudden. I could breathe in the relationship.
Yeah, and I think
So
that's
it was
really
just
important.
amazing.
You were talking about the mindset drain, and I call it
Mhm.
that on purpose because I find that a lot of times we lose ourselves when we are so stuck in our heads about the thing, right? So it's like I'm just not enough. I can't figure this out. There's
Mhm.
something wrong with me. I should have known better, whatever it is, all this noise that we have in our heads, and the amount of energy and the amount
Right.
of time
Right.
that is drained from us when we
Yeah.
are so hyper focused on what's going wrong with us as ourselves, as the container of all this, doesn't give us time to be ourselves. It doesn't give us time to come alive. And when I talk about like birthing in you, I'm really thinking birthing yourself. Like when I have a
Mhm.
baby, I feel that new version of myself coming forward. And even during the pregnancy, I get a lot of downloads, a lot of intuition, a lot of like just messages about what's next and what's coming and what I wish for and what I want. Like I start dreaming
Right.
more about big picture things because I really do think that it pushes you to the next level of who you are, but only if you're willing to put in the attention and the intention, right?
Right.
It's not going to just happen by default. And usually the
Yeah.
default is you just want to sit back and like sort of melt into whatever, the laziness takes
Right.
over. And that's
Right.
that's where the danger is, we don't we don't put ourselves first. Sometimes we don't even put ourselves on the list, right? Like
Right.
forget about being last, but we're not even there. And it really can take a toll on who you are as the
Mhm.
container of all the parts of your life. And right now we're talking
Right.
about, being a parent. That's going to really drain your relationship if you're feeling low about yourself. Because here's one thing that, there's a quote that, every child needs somebody to believe in them, one
Right.
person to believe in them. And then there was a continuation to that quote, and it's as long as they believe in themselves, right? So a
Right.
person can't believe in a child and almost like fake it if they're not modeling it themselves, if they're not living the thing that they're, hoping the kid model. So it's important for you to allow yourself to also, come alive and also find yourself. And so I love that you're saying the focus isn't only on the child and making the child, stay in
Mhm.
line and do the
Right.
thing I want them to
Exactly.
do. It's
Yeah, do
about
whatever you tell them to do. Yeah. Yeah, and you have to learn to be flexible within that space. And again, like I said, I'm a very structured person. And so this pushes me to a level of creativity and, flexibility that I was very uncomfortable with at first. But once you get in that groove, once you're dancing that dance with the child or with your co-parent or the grandparent or whomever, then you really learn what it's all about. And it's about finding that, that flexibility and that dance and flow, because when things are flowing, there's room for everybody. It's not like everyone has their spot and then suddenly your spot isn't even there. Like you said, it wasn't even on the list. But when things flow, then there's room for everyone, even if it's a new baby, even if it's a new teacher. I mean, think about becoming a parent. It's a multifaceted relationship. You're not only building a relationship with your child. First of all, you're becoming parents. You're no longer only a spouse. So there's an evolution of the relationship of the marriage itself. And then you have grandparents and you have teachers and you have parents, other parents in the mix. There's all these different relationships that you now need to navigate in addition to the parent-child relationship. And suddenly
right.
you find yourself having to dance not only with the child, but having to dance with your spouse, having to dance with the teacher. You're doing this dance with everyone. And how do you find space for yourself in all of those relationships, not only in the parent-child relationship?
Yeah.
So it's an amazing tool that is good for really any relationship.
I love this. I love this. And I would say, in order to get out of this loop and untangle the overwhelm that it feels like, when everything is just all over the place, because you're, like you're saying, you have to learn a lot of dances and you have to figure out a lot of different things, right?
Yeah,
And suddenly, in a blink of an eye, you've just completely complicated your entire life and you have no skills and no tools and no idea what to do next.
right, right.
That is why I created my freebie, which is called The Guide to Unravel Overwhelm. And I invite everyone to go and
There you
download it,
go. Yeah.
connectedforreal.com/guide. Make sure you go and grab that. First of all, it is completely incredible. It changed my life. The power of unraveling your own overwhelm is just tremendous. And you start to create space, and then that space creates availability to be yourself
Right.
and to really,
Exactly.
birth the
Exactly. And I
next
think the
level.
beauty of what you're saying about being overwhelmed and the beauty of what I'm bringing to the table is that these are things that we've experienced in our own lives, that we're so passionate about them because we see them working right in front of us, with ourselves or with our family. And that passion is what it's all about. We see it working. We want to make it work for other people.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think that there's just so much that we can go into. There's just like the whole world is open to you when you can birth yourself as a parent as well. And I highly recommend you guys all go check Karen out. So Karen, where can people sign up
Right.
and find out more about what you do?
Right. So my website is schoolinisrael.com. schoolinisrael.com. You would click on Nurtured Heart Approach and you'll see a few options there. I'll be in 2 weeks from now, I'll be running a 3-week online course. All sessions will be recorded. And I've created a special coupon code for all your listeners today, Connected for Real. One word, Connected for Real. They'll all get a 10% discount on the 3-week course that's coming up.
Woo, look at you.
Little
Fancy,
freebie in there.
fancy. You guys,
Yeah,
go
so I'm
check
really
it
excited
out.
to have some people, and it works hand in hand because you know what? Even if you don't have a co-parent doing the course with you, that's okay. That's okay. The language will be picked up on in the household, and when you learn to create a balance within one relationship, you'll learn how to use it and multiply it for other relationships as well. It's amazing. Really goes hand
You
in
want to
hand
hear
with
you want to
working.
hear about this? There's a funny story I have about this. So we had 2 kids and I went to a parenting class. It was called How to Talk to Your Kids So They Listen and Listen So They Talk.
Ah, yes, I've been to that one.
Yes. And I was going to the course. Of course, my husband wasn't because he doesn't do things like that.
Yes.
And so I came home with the workbook and I came home with my lesson and I was like ready to, take over the world. And I started doing the thing and he's like, it's never going to work. It's not going to work. What is that? Blah, blah, blah. And he was so critical and negative about it. And he was making fun of it, like, oh yeah, you really think that's going to work. And the whole time I was just like, whatever, you do you, I do me, we'll be
Right,
fine, right? Like
exactly.
it's
Yep,
gonna be
yep.
okay. And then finally one time he, magic happened and it actually worked. The
Surprise.
approach, right? I'm using the right words, I'm using the right language, I'm leaning into the connection, all the good stuff. And he's like, huh. So then the next time my daughter had a meltdown or whatever it was, he just looks at me and says, okay, you go use your magic. I'm going. I don't know what to do about this. Right. And he was like helpless because he
Right,
realized that here I am gaining the skills, knowing what to do, and he's just left behind. So it was
right.
a really funny experience, especially since it was early on in our marriage and in our experience as a couple. I think nowadays, the more we've grown, and thank God, I feel very fortunate to be able to be this old, to be able to like look back
Beautiful
and
feeling.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, obviously I'm not old, you guys know that, right? But like, to be ahead of where I was before and
To
sort
have
of look back and
knowledge.
say
Right.
like,
To
"Oh
have
my
that knowledge.
gosh," right? Like, we had 1, 2 kids, max 3. Life was so difficult. Things were so hard. My marriage felt so like everything just felt so heavy, and I'm able to look back now and say, "Wow, I can reverse engineer how I got from there to here." Just by looking at the little things and the little decisions and the little places where I was intentional, right? Because it's less about just give it time. I know a lot of people who give it time, and time not necessarily is going to do the
Mhm.
thing you want, right?
Right. You
But
need to
when you're
invest.
intentional, you're intentional and then you use
Right.
time to your advantage, oh, you could totally move mountains.
Right.
And that's where the magic happens, is when
Right.
you're
The
willing.
gift of knowing what you know now, that's the idea of the strategy. You know yourself. You know yourself. You know what's important for you. You also know what values you want to see in your children and how do you instill those. And to have that knowledge now, you feel in a completely different place than you may have felt 5, 10, years ago. So
Right.
to have the knowledge here is key.
I know. Yes. Yes. And I want to just tell all the listeners, if you're sitting here going, yeah, well, easy for you to say, you're on the other side. Well, God put us on the other side for a reason, right? We're here to help you come along. Like, sometimes you really just need a guide. You need somebody who's been there, who got over it and is telling you, I figured out the way. I figured out the roadmap. Let me show you. And I find it just in so much wealth of value to lean onto someone who has the experience and just shortcut the whole getting lost and trying to figure it out yourself.
Right,
Really,
right.
the return on investment is gigantic
Right.
because
So the
you
way
can't
I
do it
found the
alone.
approach, it fell in my lap. Honestly, it was meant to be. I was so desperate, and I happened to be in this Facebook group from Corona times. It was a Facebook group about sharing tips for preschoolers, projects, I don't know what. I never check it. I never check it. I happened once to check it and see a flyer for the Nurtured Heart approach. And I was so desperate, I didn't even realize that the course was in a completely different time zone, that I would not be able to log in live, not even once. I don't even remember if I checked about recordings. And I just immediately signed up. That's how desperate I was. It literally fell in my lap. And then I was doing this amazing course. Her name is Sephora Wayne. She's based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And everything was
Oh,
like, she was telling me, okay, are you getting the recordings? Are you in the group? Everyone was on a completely different time zone than me. It was so mamash mia shemaim, like it was meant to happen, that it happened. And this is it. You know that joke where they say the guy who's stuck in the ocean and there's a boat that comes and he says, no, Hashem's coming to get me. And then there's a helicopter that comes and says, Hashem's coming to get me. And then what else is there? Something else comes and it says, Hashem's coming. And then when he dies, the Hashem said, what happened? I sent you a boat and I sent you a helicopter and you didn't take the help that you were being offered. So here it
right.
is. Here is the help being offered, and you want to grab onto it because the knowledge is just what's going to set you apart from your old self in who knows how many years from now.
Oh, yes. And results are so quick when you don't expect them, right? A lot of people are like so attached to the results. They're like, I need them now. So it's more like let go, relax, and the results
Right,
just hit you in the
right.
face, and it's
And the
so beautiful.
beauty about this approach, you can implement it from day one. It's not like there's a book that you have to sit through and finish and you're waiting and you're waiting and say, wait, but what do I do? What do I do with XYZ? You are going to leave from the first session of the course with concrete strategies into what to implement immediately with your children from day
I
one.
love I love it. And you mentioned Sephora. She is also going to be a guest on this podcast. We're going to be talking about parenting and God, and it is so perfect.
Wonderful.
It's so
Yeah.
perfect. I did not know that you guys were connected. I'm
Yeah,
so
that's my
happy.
connection. That's amazing. See, it's all meant to be. All meant to be.
Sephora is
Sephora's
awesome.
wonderful, and she's the one that opened the door for me to this wonderful world of nurtured hearts. And I think there's only 2 or 3 of us trained here in Israel, and I'm super excited to be able to share it with the rest of all the parents that I work with.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having
Ah,
me.
I'm taking a deep breath because I just feel so, so full, so happy. This is such a blessing
Wonderful.
to have you here in this digital studio. And thank you. Thank you all for listening. And don't forget to be back for next week's episode with another amazing guest. And don't forget that you can be connected for real.